Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. We are focused again on politics and talking with local candidates in contested races in advance of the November 4th election. There is an open seat in the First Barnstable District with the retirement of Cleon Turner. Elisa Zawadzkas is the Democrat seeking the seat, and Tim Whelan is the Republican seeking the seat. We interviewed them individually before the primary, and now we have them here together. Welcome to the show to you both.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
We'll start with brief introductions of 2 minutes apiece, and then I will ask a series of questions, and we will alternate as to whom answers first. We did a coin toss before starting here today to see who would speak first, and that is you, Tim Whelan. Introduce yourself to the voters in 2 minutes, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. My name is Tim Whelan, and I ask for your vote on November 4th. I live in Brewster with my beautiful wife of 24 years, Lisa. She's my high school sweetheart, and we've been blessed with two wonderful daughters, Maggie and Katie. They're both graduates of Nauset Regional High School and are Dean's List students in college. There's not a day that goes by that I don't take a moment to reflect on the blessings these three women bring into my life. I'm a very lucky man. My father was an elementary school teacher who also worked several other jobs to support our family. My mother was a registered nurse. I well remember watching her leave our home to work second and third shift at the hospital. The lessons of hard work that these two remarkable people instilled in me came from their example. I have been a loyal public servant serving both my community and our nation for over 26 years. I began my career in public service in the 1980s as a corrections officer. I moved on to a career with the Massachusetts State Police, where I was stationed at various locations throughout our Commonwealth. For the last 7 years of my career, I was a sergeant and shift commander at the State Police Barracks here in South Yarmouth. I am also a veteran of our nation's military, having served honorably in the United States Marine Corps. I have coached girls basketball from town rec leagues to travel basketball, AAU, and lastly as a girls JV basketball coach at Nauset Regional. I serve on the Brewster Council on Aging and firmly recognize the needs of our large community of seniors here in the First Barnstable District. I have also served on the Governor's Task Force on School Safety and Security, working directly with the Secretaries of Education, Health and Human Services, and Public Safety to establish a framework that schools can use to ensure a safe and nurturing learning environment for our most precious resource, our children. The issues our state government will face in the coming years are many, and I'm confident that I have the experience, determination, and work ethic necessary to accomplish great things for our citizens. I ask for your vote on Tuesday, November 4th, so that I can get to work for you.
And that's just 2 minutes. Thank you so much. And now, Elisa Zawadzkas, you have 2 minutes to introduce yourself to the voters.
Great. Thank you, Laura. And thank you to everyone that turned out for the election on September 9th. I couldn't be more humbled by the overwhelming show of support. I got 58%, it's a team effort here, we got 58% of the votes in the Democratic primary, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that showing of support. Now Alex Morash and Ian Ryan are on board with me, my opponents in the primary, and we're onward to November 4th. I'm a grassroots, progressive, and independent Democrat who is going to work hard for you to solve problems, work across the party lines, to grow opportunities for the people and the businesses in this community. I care about this community. This is where I'm from. I grew up in Orleans. I attended Nauset, and I received a wonderful education there. And that gave me the opportunity to attend Deerfield Academy and then to go to the College of the Holy Cross, where I received a full scholarship to play basketball, and I was the captain of that team my senior year. And after that, I attended New England School of Law in Boston. But I really give credit to Nauset for the foundation it gave me to have that opportunity and to obtain those goals for me. And I will work hard to make sure that every student in this district has the ability to reach their goals and their aspirations, whatever those aspirations may be. Now I live in West Dennis. I'm a homeowner there for 7 years, and I've had the honor of serving the town of Dennis on the Board of Appeals for the past 5 years. I'm a business owner, and I've been growing a law practice for 8 years, working hard, fighting for people in this community, and I will fight for you and your family in this community. That's what I do. And if people can't afford an attorney, I represent them for free, especially women.
And now we're at just 2 minutes.
Thank you for your support. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to tell you why I'm uniquely qualified for this position.
And now I'll ask a series of questions, and Elisa, will start with you. What do you think are the biggest issues facing the district that you would like to focus on if you were elected as state rep? And so I'll give you 2 minutes, which means you just have to give an overview of some of the issues you'd like to look at if you were elected. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Laura. This is a fantastic question. I've been running a grassroots campaign, and I've been an open vessel listening to what the constituents want, and the way I see my position is listening to what's needed and giving advice and advising my community for what we should do. And the issues that have risen to the top is equitable educational funding. Wastewater is without a doubt the biggest threat to this economy and this environment. I really admire when I hear Senator Wolf talk about it, how that was the reason that he decided to run for office. I think that's admirable, and it shows his taking on a big problem like that and seeing that he has the ability to do something about it. And also supporting the seniors. There's so many on fixed incomes here, and we need to be cognizant of that whenever there's talk about increasing any taxes or keeping them in the ability to stay in their house and to live with the dignity and respect that they deserve. Also, a huge one, I'll be a huge voice on Beacon Hill for keeping young people on the Cape. I'm an active member of Cape Cod Young Professionals, and not only for my personal interest of keeping the friends that I went to Nauset with who own businesses, want to have businesses here, to give them the ability to live here, we need to address the affordable housing and having jobs available. And I've been a member, and I'm excited to be a strong voice in Boston to help keep the young people on the Cape, because also the community as a whole relies on it, the seniors, and so those are the issues that have risen to the top, in my opinion.
And now, Tim, the question goes to you. What do you see as the biggest issues facing the district that if you are elected as representative, you could focus on? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I share several of the same concerns that Ms. Zawadzkas mentioned. And the first and foremost, particularly where the two largest towns in our district are Dennis and Yarmouth, there's a significant concern there regarding the school funding. We've discussed ad infinitum how the Chapter 70 law was written in 1993, and that there were certain things that we need to look at in there, because I believe that it unfairly penalizes Cape Cod, where it uses the income levels and the property tax, the property rates in the establishment of the budget. But I think we also need to look at new sources of revenue for school funding. I was assigned as I mentioned earlier, to the Governor's Task Force on School Safety and Security, and I've worked at the policy level on these issues affecting our schools. One of the things that came out of this was Governor Patrick, established a new line item in the budget specifically for school safety. And I'm looking forward to this. It was minimally funded for this budget term, but I'm looking forward in budget terms to expanding this and letting this be an avenue for our to get better funding into our schools. There are also great concerns here regarding local aid. Speaking with the many municipally elected officials that we have, unrestricted general government aid and other forms of local aid, including Chapter 90, have been underfunded for years. Also, one thing that is of grave concern to not only me, but so many of the people that I speak with here in the district, is the issue of drug abuse, opiate abuse, and addiction. Opiate abuse, I've learned in my decades of service in law enforcement, opiate abuse affects every age, every gender, every demographic that you can imagine, and pretty much everyone that I know has someone that they love that's been affected by addiction, and I want to work hard to improve our care and maybe expand the number of beds that we have available for people for inpatient addiction treatment.
And that's just about 2 minutes. We'll get back to that subject of addiction a little later, I think. And Tim, we'll go right to you again with the next question. The Cape's economy is always a concern. What are some of the challenges of the economy here on Cape Cod, and what steps might you take if you were elected as representative for the First Barnstable District to help the local economy? You have 2 minutes.
Well, the one thing that jumps right out at me that I think is going to be one of the greatest boosts to our economy down here is the establishment of Bridgewater State University and their satellite campus that they are going to be opening in January at the Lawrence MacArthur School on Route 28 in South Yarmouth. This building holds a near and dear place in my heart because when I was working at the barracks in South Yarmouth, I would look out my window at that school every single day. I very much appreciate the fact that this satellite campus is going to provide more educational opportunities to our young. It's going to expand the availability of four-year programs. And we have a lot of our young that are graduating high school that were geographically isolated from the opportunity to get a quality four-year education. That's being fixed. And I think that once we expand the availability of higher ed to our high school graduates, I believe that the jobs will follow. So to me, that is probably the first and biggest step in the right direction.
And now, Elisa, the question goes to you. What are the challenges with the Cape's economy, and what steps would you take if you were elected as state representative to help the local economy here on Cape Cod? You have 2 minutes.
The unique challenge to this community is because we're a tourist-based economy and it's seasonal. So keeping people here year-round is one of the greatest challenges we have. And also keeping young people on the Cape. And as I've already mentioned, and I feel like I'll probably be mentioning a lot, is the Cape Cod Young Professionals. And they're taking some steps to attract, engage, and retain the next generation here, which is vital to the economy. And what's exciting to me is there are a lot of opportunities that haven't been realized, and it's a matter of harnessing the energy. We're in a situation where there are so many retirees that have so much to offer because they come from different walks of life and their wisdom just needs to be linked with the younger generation who has the motivation and the energy. And one pilot program in process right now is the mentor program through Cape Cod Young Professionals, and we've gotten state funding. We have to continue to fight to get state funding because we all know that we don't get as much back from the state as we deserve based on what we give them. So, and the one project that I've heard of, I agree with Mr. Whelan, Tim, about Bridgewater. That's a great opportunity to keep young people here and to link them with the community to step in the right direction. We need more programs like we have to build on what the community college is already doing, making opportunities for physician's assistants, nurse practitioners, things like that. And another thing I was talking to Representative Turner about, which I thought was so interesting, was the oyster farm in Dennis and having that sold to either the town or the state and then bringing in UMass to run a program. And you can't go wrong with the aquaculture because not only does that really help the environment, it helps the economy, and it's a natural good fit. So there's a lot of ideas and room for building economy that's,
and that's 2 minutes,
makes
Elisa.
sense to this community. Thank you.
And so, Elisa, actually, the next question goes to you first.
Okay.
How to deal with the Cape's wastewater. Now, the pollution of the region's estuaries from nitrogen and wastewater is one of the region's pressing environmental and economic concerns. What are your thoughts on the direction the Cape Cod Commission is going on this issue? And what would you do if you were state representative to help the process? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. This is a really important question because, as I mentioned before, it is the single greatest threat to our economy. And if the water, what I always say, the bottom line is if the water is not clean, people are not going to want to come to vacation here, and they're not going to want to retire here. And not only do we want it to fix the problem, but we have to because we have the courts breathing down our neck requiring us to do something. I think we're fortunate to have the Cape Cod Commission. They've offered a regional approach, which I think, it's necessary because the estuaries aren't divided by town line, and each So we have to take a regional approach and work on it together because we need the state and federal funding to keep the costs down for the individual people. But also, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. We have to look at each town and actually each estuary individually because each one is unique, and how to treat each one is going to be a different solution to the problem. And I would be, the Cape Cod Commission, we have hearings coming up. There's already been a few, and there's more coming forward to get the input from the town and the local input to see what approach makes the most sense. And I think to try to solve issues like this town by town would be tremendously challenging. We see how much bickering there is with school funding, things like that, when this price is going to be a colossal one. So we have to continue to pressure the state and the federal government and show them how crucial it is to get funding, that we deserve aid from them. And I have a great rapport with the Cape delegation already, and it would be a pleasure for me to help conquer this issue, work with them to do that.
And that's just 2 minutes. And now, Tim, the question goes to you. How to deal with the Cape's wastewater issues, the pollution of the region's estuaries from nitrogen and wastewater, one of the region's most pressing environmental and economic concerns. What are your thoughts on the direction the Cape Cod Commission is going on this issue? You have 2 minutes.
Well, I'm fortunate to have been able to go to a few of the meetings locally that the Cape Cod Commission's held, where the discussion centered around the 204 plans. And one of the numbers that struck me when I went to these meetings was they mentioned that Cape Cod has approximately 5% of the population of the Commonwealth, yet we have 20% of the Title V septic systems in the Commonwealth, and that was alarming to me. And as Ms. Zawadzkas had stated, we're under the gun right now with the courts, so we have to deal with this. My job, I believe, as a state legislator, is to make this an affordable proposition, is to support the local towns, to support our residents, because let's face it, we're going to have to face this issue, but it's going to be very expensive. They're already talking figures into the multiple millions and billions of dollars right now to get the Cape completely soared up. One of the things that I don't hear discussed often enough is what this is going to do to our average citizens. We have a lot of people that live here on the Cape that are on fixed incomes. We have working families right now that are just getting by. And when you start attaching betterment fees because they have to hook up to town sewer, it's going to make the Cape not an affordable place to live. We keep going around waving the flag that we need to have more affordable housing on Cape Cod, yet we keep making the Cape less affordable to live. In addition to the betterment fees, the people that I speak to, they're scared. The affordability is also being affected by the Biggert Waters flood maps, the electricity rates that they just reported in the paper yesterday that are about to go through the roof yet again, and state and property tax increases. My concern here is how this is going to affect the affordability for our residents, and my job is to do everything that I can, expend every resource to make it work and to get the funding to make this an affordable iteration.
And that's just 2 minutes. Tim, the next question goes to you first. There is a problem with young people leaving the region, as has already been brought up today. If you were elected as state representative to the First Barnstable District, do you feel that is a problem you could work on? And if so, do you have ideas on how to stem the tide of young people leaving the Cape? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Laura. This issue is very near and dear to me. I have 2 daughters. My daughters are both in college. My daughters are not going to be able to live on Cape Cod when they graduate college. My oldest is finishing her senior year. She knows that there are no employment opportunities for her in her field. And my youngest daughter, Katie, is in her sophomore year of college. I grew up living down the street from my grandparents, and the joy and value that my grandparents brought to my life, I can't even begin to list those joys. And I'm not going to be able to live near my grandchildren. And to me, that's wrong. That's the problem. The solutions that we have to look at, we already discussed earlier that I think that one of a positive step in the right direction is Bridgewater State University coming here and expanding their 4-year programs. I believe that the employers will come down behind that, and you have an educated and talented workforce, the jobs will indeed follow. But how do we keep them here? And I think that you have to look at what I mentioned earlier, affordable housing. I have a very close friend of mine who's a volunteer in my campaign who's been a headhunter in the high-tech industry for years. And he keeps telling me that he was doing recruiting down here for several companies, and the biggest issue that he had to getting people to come down here and stay here was the affordability of housing. So I would be working not only to expand the programs at Bridgewater State University, but I also want to seriously work on building new affordable housing so that we can draw some of this young talent down here, because when they come here out of college, let's face it, they're not going to be making $95,000 a year. Typically, they're going to be coming in at entry-level, white-collar jobs, and they're going to be taking a gamble coming here.
Very good. Just under 2 minutes. The question now goes to you, Elisa. You've already said you feel that this issue of young people leaving the Cape, you're involved in that. What are your ideas on how to stem this tide? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. One thing that bothers me is I hate this doomsday perspective of the future of the Cape Cod. I'm optimistic about the opportunities for affecting change, and I'm excited that this issue's been brought to the forefront. It was really when the census came out that showed that between 2000 and 2010, I think it was 27% of the population ages 25 to 44 left the Cape, and that's 15,000 people. That's the size of Dennis. That's an alarming figure. But because we got those statistics, we've been doing something about it, which is great. The Cape Cod Young Professionals has taken the reins on that, and they're implementing changes that will affect change, implementing programs that will affect change, and it's a matter of harnessing the energy. And one program they have going, starting as soon as this week actually, is the Mentor program. My good friend is heading that, and another friend is heading the Civic Engagement Committee to get people engaged on the Cape. But I think you see, what we need to do specifically is it's jobs and it's housing, and as far as the jobs front, we need to encourage entrepreneurship. We need to give incentives to start businesses here. I think back office is a great example of a business that is a good paying job and it's been successful. That's in Harwich. Dennisport is exciting to get out there and start a business and to have it flourish the way it has. Going to that block party this summer was incredible. And that's just an example of what can be done when these creative minds get together and kind of tweak. There are resources available, and we're getting attention from the state level, which is evidenced where we got a $50,000 grant to start the Mentor program. So the fact that this issue is coming to the forefront and we have a lot of people working together, the municipal and the state level and the local nonprofit organizations, that there is a lot that can be done, and I would be a huge voice for that.
And sorry to interrupt. We're at 2 minutes. But the next question goes right back to you, Elisa, and it's been touched on already today. The opiate abuse epidemic on Cape Cod and the region. Is there anything you could do specifically as a state representative to help in this issue? You have 2 minutes.
Absolutely, and this is a huge concern for me and for this community, and I've had the first-hand knowledge of this as an attorney in the courts, growing my law practice for the past 8 years. I'm in court literally every day, and I see what resources are available to people suffering from addictions, but more importantly, I see what resources are not available. And one example I think is telling is where you have a family member who comes to court on what's called a Section 35 petition, and that's where they ask the judge to commit their loved one because they're concerned about what they'll do to themselves or the community because they're struggling with an addiction. And when the person comes and petitions the court, right now as it is, there's one doctor in the southeastern region of the state to do the evaluations to determine whether or not they should be committed. I mean, that's just alarming. And then if the doctor determines that there is a problem and they should be committed, sometimes there's not a bed available and the judge puts the person in jail. Now, this is someone who has not committed a crime and they are seeking treatment, or their family seeking treatment for them, and it's not available. I would be a strong advocate for more funding for treatment, and that's and there's a drug court, and that's a step in the right direction. I handle cases in the drug court as well, and focus in mental health. That goes right hand in hand with the drug addiction. So treatment and those departments, we need to fight for funding to get more treatment, and that's something I could do as a state rep.
Tim, now it's your turn. The opiate abuse epidemic on the Cape. Are there solutions, different ways of doing things that could help if you were state rep? 2 minutes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Laura. I come into this question with a little bit of a background in it, 26 years in law enforcement. Let me state first that Governor Patrick got it exactly right. I was watching Fox 25 News this morning, and they were talking about new painkiller that's going to be released on the market by order of the FDA, known as Zohydro. Zohydro is basically OxyContin on steroids, and if we think we have an addiction problem now, it's about to get worse. The typical mechanism of how this addiction works that I've seen over the years is you have your gateway drugs, marijuana, hashish, that lead all the way up to further experimentation. Sometimes people just go directly to the pills and they get hooked on the pills as part of their pain management from an injury. But they find that it's $30 to $40 each to buy pills on the black market. Heroin, it's about $5 a bag. So it becomes a financial issue, and that's how people end up on heroin. One of the last acts I was called upon to do before I retired from the state police was to rescue a woman from an overdose. And this is close to home. I had to hold the woman's airway open as she sat in a taxi parked in front of the barracks, waiting for Yarmouth Fire to arrive and return her via Narcan. Nobody needs to explain to me that there is a serious addiction problem here on the Cape. A close friend of mine 2 months ago lost his 27-year-old son to a heroin overdose. College graduate, became an addict. Last night, Rebecca Hamlin, my campaign manager, and I went to Dennis Yarmouth Regional High School, and we listened to Chris Herron, and former NBA star, and we listened to his story of addiction. At the end of the day, the legislature is starting to march in the right direction. What we need more beds in inpatient treatment facilities, and I believe we need to expand the recent change that mandates 14 days coverage for inpatient treatment. I believe we need to expand that to 60. So we're starting in the right direction, but we still haven't done enough.
And that's the time. And now we go to closing statements already. You each get 1 minute. We did a coin toss to determine who would be the final person speaking. And actually, Tim Whelan, you will go first this time. You have 1 minute to leave a final thought with voters.
You're very kind. First, Laura, I want to thank you for affording both of us the opportunity to come here today and to speak on the issues to your listening audience. And I want to thank your audience for their interest in this race. I believe that state government has been operating in a vacuum and not always in a way that is in the best interest of our citizens. This belief is reinforced by the many conversations I've had with our local residents who share this belief. I'm a firm believer in the power of active listening. Government needs to listen to people and to act based upon their needs. I'm a hard worker, and I have a commitment to not only listening to our citizens, but in serving them. I believe the constituent service is among the most important jobs of a state representative, and I have been serving our community for decades. What our district needs in the next legislative session is a bipartisan problem solver who has an unblemished record of public service and is ready to roll their sleeves up on day one and get right to work. I believe I'm that person, but I need your vote on November 4th so I can go to Beacon Hill and get the job done for you. Thank you.
And that's 1 minute. And now, Elisa Zawadzkas, you have 1 minute to leave a final thought with voters.
Great. Thank you, Laura. I've been fighting for people for 8 years growing my law practice. I've been committed to this community for my whole life. I will fight for you. I will fight for your family. I will fight for this community, for the seniors, for the young families, for the veterans, for the business owners. I am a small business owner. I understand I don't have the luxury of a paycheck at the end of every week. I need to keep expenses down and make sure it's profitable. I get that. And I'm uniquely qualified for this position. I've been negotiating and advocating and working to solve problems. On the zoning board, that's a problem-solving position where you have to consider economic development, but also the character and charm of the environment. I've been reading laws, and it's an appropriate next step to be drafting the laws. I'm a very hard worker. I've been building a grassroots campaign because I am a good listener, and I like people like me, and that's how it's going to, thank you, sorry.
And that's your 1 minute. And we end our debate with Tim Whelan and Elisa Zawadzkas. They are running to replace Cleon Turner as state representative in the First Barnstable District. Thank you both so much for coming today.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
We'll post the podcast of this debate and all of our election coverage on our website at capecod.com. I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.